The year was 1922. Deep in the Bavarian countryside, a small farmstead called Hinterkaifeck sat isolated among rolling fields and dark forests. For generations, the Gruber family had worked this land, living quietly away from the bustling towns. But on the evening of March 31st, something unspeakably horrific happened within those walls. 6 people were brutally murdered with a farm tool, and nearly a century later, we still don't know who did it or why. Please follow us for more stories at pastexplode.com. What makes this case even more chilling is what happened in the days leading up to the massacre. Andreas Gruber, the 63-year-old patriarch, had been finding strange footprints in the snow leading from the forest to his house, but none leading back. He discovered that someone had been reading his newspapers in the barn. Tools were mysteriously moved. The family's previous maid had quit just months earlier, claiming the farmhouse was haunted. The isolated farm was home to Andreas Gruber, his wife Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Kazilia and 2-year-old Josef. A new maid, Maria Baumgartner, had just arrived that very day, March 31st, to replace the one who fled in terror. That Friday evening, neighbors noticed that no smoke was rising from the Hinterkaifeck chimney. This was unusual for a working farm in early spring. Saturday came and went, with no sign of life. By Tuesday, April 4th, concerned neighbors finally ventured to the property to check on the family. What they found in the barn was a scene of unimaginable horror. 4 bodies lay stacked like cordwood beneath a pile of hay. Andreas Gruber, his wife, their daughter Victoria, and little Kazilia had all been struck down with a mattock, a heavy farming tool used for digging and chopping. The killer had used such force that skulls were split wide open, and Kazilia the younger had survived the initial attack long enough to pull out clumps of her own hair in agony. But the killer wasn't finished. Inside the main house, they found 2-year-old Josef in his bed, also killed with the same brutal efficiency. The maid, Maria, who had worked at the farm for less than 6 hours, was found dead in her small servants' quarters. Here's where the case becomes even more disturbing. Evidence suggested that whoever committed these murders had remained on the property for days afterward. Someone had been feeding the livestock. Fresh meals had been prepared in the kitchen. Neighbors reported seeing smoke from the chimney on Saturday, the day after the murders. The killer had calmly gone about daily farm chores while 6 corpses lay hidden nearby. The Bavarian police launched one of the most intensive investigations in the region's history. Over 100 suspects were questioned, including traveling salesmen, disgruntled farm workers, and even Victoria's estranged husband, who was supposedly killed in World War I, but whose death was never confirmed. Some theorized he had returned and discovered that his wife had been living with her own father, Andreas, in an inappropriate relationship. The younger Kazilia was rumored to be Andreas's child, not his granddaughter. Local folklore pointed to supernatural explanations. The previous maid's claims about the house being haunted seemed prophetic. Some whispered about ancient curses on the land itself. The deep Bavarian forests had always been places where reality seemed thin, where old superstitions held sway. But the most compelling theory focused on robbery gone wrong. Though nothing valuable appeared to be missing, others suspected a mentally disturbed individual who knew the family's routines intimately. The methodical nature of the killings and the killer's comfortable stay afterward suggested someone familiar with farm life. Despite thousands of hours of investigation and dozens of suspects, the case officially went cold. The farmhouse itself was demolished in 1923, less than a year after the murders. Local authorities claimed it was to prevent morbid curiosity seekers, but many believed they simply wanted to erase the horror from the landscape. The Hinterkaifeck murders became Bavaria's most infamous unsolved case. They inspired novels, documentaries, and countless theories. In 2007, students from a German police academy used modern forensic techniques to re-examine the evidence. But even with DNA analysis and psychological profiling, the mystery remains unsolved. Please follow us for more stories at pastexplode.com. The killer's identity remains a mystery. What haunts investigators most is the calculated coldness of it all. This wasn't a crime of passion or a random attack. Someone planned this carefully, executed it brutally, then stayed to maintain the farm as if nothing had happened. 6 innocent people, including 2 small children, were slaughtered by someone who then sat at their kitchen table and ate their food. The dark forests of Bavaria still whisper about that terrible spring night in 1922. Somewhere in those woods, or perhaps in some forgotten grave, lies the answer to who turned a quiet family farm into a house of horrors. The truth about Hinterkaifeck remains buried as deep as its victims, a mystery that has survived nearly a century and may survive a century more.